Hello, friends. It's time for yet another story. This is from Reddit user MetaGizaZ, which is a cool name. When you mistake a neckbeard for an old friend. Oh dear, I don't know if I like where this is going. This story happened about a month or two ago, however, it still makes my skin crawl. Before I begin, though, let me explain the title. See, about a year ago, I got a text from an unknown number asking if this was my number, claiming to be, quote, Chris from high school. It's not his real name, obviously, but I'll get into why I'm calling him Chris later. Anyway, the only Chris I really knew in high school was a really good friend of mine who, despite not going to the school I was in a friend group with me outside of school. Now, a lot of us were so inseparable that we even had a little private site to keep in touch. So naturally, I'm excited to see that he's trying to reach out to me and possibly try and connect again. So I confirm, yeah, it's me, and this would later bite me in the ass. While he was the one who usually initiated the conversations, we would have conversations via text once he did. One day he said that he had gotten me some keychains of ghost-type Pokemon at our city's yearly anime convention, which is my favorite type of Pokemon, really. So I was surprised that he was still going to cons, since back in high school, we would either go with at least 4 people in our group or just not go at all. But I figured, he might have found another group, or I was just stuck in the past. He said at some point in the future he wanted to give them to me in person. However, I could never find any room in my schedule for us to meet up. That, and for some reason, I'm a little nervous about this. See, I had a crush on Chris back then, so that might be a factor. And I'm still a bit shy, so that also was a factor. Or it might have been because my gut was telling me that something didn't seem right. So fast forward to around the time that Sonic movie came out. I got a text from Chris asking if I wanted to go see it with him. Since I had heard surprisingly good things about it, and the fact that I'm gamer trash, I agreed. But then the same feeling popped up again. It was as if I didn't want to go alone. So, deciding to act on that, I told him that if I'm going to go, I'm going to invite some friends and I'll introduce him. Half because I wanted to be safe, and half because I also was truthfully wanting to introduce some of my current friends to one of my former friends from a different group. However, once I told him that, something about his text saying, "Oh, okay," seemed like he was kind of disappointed. Well, fortunately, one of my current friends, who I'll call John, was free the day that Chris and I agreed to go. So now I'm definitely feeling better. So, fast forward to the day of the movie. I arrived looking for the Chris I knew at the theater. I knew that he'd look different, but that I would recognize him regardless. However, I couldn't find who I was looking for anywhere, so I texted him asking where he was, and I get a reply saying that he's outside. So, I go outside, only to see someone who is not the Chris I knew. He looked familiar, yeah, but he definitely wasn't who I was convinced it was. It was then that I realized that I had just fucked up. Memories of this Chris came back. He went to my high school, but we were just acquaintances. We'd talk about games and stuff occasionally, and I'd see him at anime club in our school, but we weren't exactly close during that time. What I remember the most is that he would always wear this faded bob-omb shirt, and he looked and sounded like he hadn't gone through puberty the entirety of his life. Now is the moment that I'll explain why I decided to call him Chris, which will also paint a picture of what he looks like. See, he kind of looks like Chris from Family Guy, if that character were a live-action person. If they ever made a live-action remake, the show, for example, he'd get the part immediately. It's the most amazing thing is that he looked practically the same as he did in high school, save for the literal neckbeard. It was as if he had found the Mountain Dew of youth or something. And the craziest thing, he still had that same fucking shirt, which would make it over a decade old now. I didn't know how long he had it beforehand, I instantly tried to think of any possible explanation. He's a fellow gaming nerd like me, so maybe it's a coincidence, maybe I'm wrong. As soon as he saw me, he lit up and came over. Maybe he was wanting to say hi since he hadn't seen me for a while. He dug into his jacket and fished out 2 keychains of, yeah, you guessed it, ghost-type Pokemon. It's a bit overdue, but here you go. I might have been expecting someone else, but he was kind of a friend, and maybe this will work out. Yeah, so I accept the keychain with a thank you and then realize something horrifying. How the fuck did he get my number in the first place? It was then that I began to look for the friend that I have invited. I did not want to be alone with this dude right now. Fortunately, John arrives about 2 minutes later. It's now time for a movie. For those who haven't seen the Sonic movie, it's pretty good. Not the best, but definitely not what I was expecting from something featuring Sonic, as the franchise hasn't exactly had a good amount of games recently. Anybody who watched my Let's Play live stream of Sonic Adventure already knows that. Manfred is still the best character. After the movie, John had to leave since he was getting a ride with someone else. So now I'm stuck with Chris. No. I'm about to put in a request for an Uber. I medically can't drive due to epilepsy, so I have to rely on others to get from point A to point B. When Chris speaks up, you're not spending any money on a ride while I'm here. I'll get you home. This was where I stopped to think, maybe I'm being a little overcritical, you know? Maybe I spent too much time reading the stories about Neckbeards. After all, he seemed nice enough. Maybe I gave him my number sometime in high school and just kind of forgot. Besides, if he tried anything and my phone had tracking enabled, and my mom was extremely protective when it came to me, well, he wasn't the one driving, apparently. Chris told me that his dad was going to take us home. Once again, I scolded myself for even considering him doing something weird and relaxed a little bit. We talked a bit until his dad arrived, which was honestly nice, but I wasn't going to openly reveal my address, so I typed it into Google Maps and I was finally in the home stretch. The ride home was uneventful, honestly. We talked a little, but that was about it. Finally, we arrive at my house. I say my goodbyes before I could open the door. Chris rushed out of his side to open it for me. Weird. But what he said next made me laugh. As soon as he opened the door, I shit you not, he literally says, "M'lady," as he gestures outwards. This caused me to bust out laughing because I honestly thought he was fucking with me. But when I did, he looked genuinely confused. Weird, but okay. Once I got to the house, I fished around for my keys since my mom wasn't home from her friends yet. Fortunately, I forgot something very important. A few weeks ago, I went to Bali. My mom gave my house keys to the neighbor so they could put our mail and stuff inside the house. So as of right now, I am locked out. Seeing they hadn't got in my house yet, I hear Chris's dad say from the car, go out there and sit with her. So this was enough for Chris to be encouraged to meet up with me on the porch while I'm texting my mom the situation. I get a response saying that she'd be there in about 10 minutes, and I explained that everything was fine and he could go. No, he insisted on waiting with me because it's cold out. So now, despite me saying that I'm fine, he's going to sit here with me. So I made myself comfortable on the porch swing, which was hard since he was making me incredibly uneasy. It was then that he drapes his jacket over my shoulders in order for me not to be cold. Please note, I'm wearing a very heavy-duty, fluffy jacket. Made the temperature seem like it was almost 75, so I told him so, but once again he insisted. It was now that both the cringe and creep levels were steadily rising. I was in a bad fucking rom-com. Oh, great. And then it reaches the pinnacle. He slowly moves closer to me, leaned on my shoulder, and sighed all dreamily. And I heard the words that are branded into my brain for all eternity. I love you. What the fuck? I barely knew this guy in school. We hadn't seen each other since 2011. And he just said that he's in love with me. I then saw my saving grace in the distance, my mom. This gave me an excuse to give him his jacket back, get up, and wait by the front door. After my mom arrived and dragged my suffering on by chatting with Chris for a little bit, we said our goodbyes and I rushed inside. Since then, I haven't really spoken to him aside from one-word answers to text rather than just conversations. In hindsight, I think he planned for this entire thing to be a date between us, which is why he was so disappointed when I said I was going to see if my friends wanted to come. I'm grateful for John being able to come, to say the least. I've had some extremely minor encounters with neckbeards, but this one is definitely the one that I'll never be able to erase from my mind. Update. After replying to a comment about how he got my number, I remember that I had emailed one of my best friends about the situation. They both were in classes together, and I decided to ask if she at some point gave my number to him back then or recently. She replied saying that she didn't even have my number due to a phone change, and that even if she did, she wouldn't just give it out like that. When I told her what happened, she told me that Chris did the exact same thing in terms of giving her gifts and being really clingy. She explained that he was really insistent on her accepting his gifts, and that what happened to me sounded similar to what happened to her. And this got me thinking, which led me to this conclusion. In school, my friend and I both vaguely looked like each other. However, I'm a brunette and she's blonde with shorter hair than mine. Our personalities were also really different, with me being the more confident while she was very shy. Despite this, we look alike in rather specific ways. So either Chris was using me as the second option for my friend, or my friend was the second option for me back in high school. I might be overthinking this a little, but when you hear all of that, you tend to get a little suspicious about intentions. Ooh, boy, that's a fucking weird dude right there. Yeah, wow. I still want to know how the fuck he got your number. That is really creepy. I mean, I know that certain social media sites, like Facebook, will put your number on there if you don't specifically tell them otherwise. So if your Facebook is not specifically set to private, and you don't, make sure that Facebook is like, don't put your fucking number anywhere, someone can just go to your profile and find it. Facebook is not what we call the best with security. But other than that, I'm not really sure. But that's some... It's pretty cringe, but it's also like some next level fucking desperation tactics. This whole thing of just like, oh, I barely know you, but no, I'm totally in love with you. I wonder what he thought this was going to be. I wonder exactly how he thought this was going to go. It's very, very odd. And it's just like, damn, dude, that's just not okay. You just don't do that kind of shit. But you can tell he was really trying his damnedest to be very charming. At least he wasn't, worse. I have heard worse stories. So that's a plus. At least it's not the worst. But still, yeah, I'd avoid this guy. There's something really not right going on there. But thank you for writing this in, and thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this story, and I'll see you guys in the next video. I love you all. Goodbye.